Thanks everybody for being here this evening for the Arts Project Support Informational Webinar. Would ask you if you wouldn't mind to mute your microphone and use the chat box for questions. We will open up the floor at the end of the webinar for questions folks have. But if you have questions along the way, please use the chat box and ask us your questions. So, hi everybody, I'm Maya. I'm the Executive Director of the Indiana Arts Commission, and I'm joined by Eric Ashby, who's our Director of Programs this evening. And again, we're so thankful to you for the work that you do to strengthen Indiana through arts and creativity, and we're glad to bring you information about this year's Arts Project Support webinar. Couple of words about accessibility. If you need accommodations for the grant guidelines or application, please contact our accessibility coordinator at the email and phone number there on the screen. And if you need help with captions or accessibility for this evening's webinar, please send a private chat to Connie Brom. And I want to shout out other IAC staff who are here on the webinar with us this evening. Director of Marketing, Connie Brom, Deputy Director Andre Zhang-Sanera, and then one of our regional partners, Deanna Polsma, who is such a super partner that she is a partner in two regions, regions 8 and 12. So you will hear from Deanna here shortly, and also want to give a shout out to Ryan, who's our regional arts partner for Region 7, and that's a huge territory. So big shout out to Ryan for everything he does up at Noblesville Creates as a regional arts partner for us. So here's the agenda for this evening. We're going to talk about the goals of the Arts Project Support Program, why we do it, what it's for. We'll talk about some changes for FY26. We'll talk about program eligibility. That's when I'll hand it over to Eric. Then we'll go through the program timeline, talk about grant awards and grantee requirements, the evaluation process and criteria, the online grant application review. So you'll get to sort of see the application in its native habitat, what it looks like. And then we'll open the floor up for some questions. Okay, so now we'll move on, talk a little bit about us. I'm guessing you probably know who we are, but just in case not, we're an agency of state government, and our funding comes from the Indiana General Assembly, as well as the National Endowment for the Arts. Core component of our commitment to investing in the state's vibrant and rich arts and culture sector are grants. And our grants support people and communities through arts organizations and arts projects. And again, we are here talking about the Arts Project Support Program this evening. Regional arts partners are a big piece of our ability to administer this program statewide. They are our boots on the ground and provide regional responsive support to you. And I want to hand the floor over for a second to Deanna Polsma, who's our regional arts partner for Region 8 and 12, to talk a little bit about what partners do and how you can work with them.
Yes, thanks, Maya. So we are 10 individuals around the state that are here. We are your largest cheerleaders through this process. If you are interested in a grant program, we're here to help answer any questions you might have as it relates to the programming you do. If you need help getting an account set up, if you have questions about the online system or about a specific project, we offer grant application reviews. If you're a first-time applicant, you can get a draft review. But we're here. You can email us, you can call us. We are here to set you up for success. So whatever we can do, even if it's just networking you with other organizations in your area, other artists that you might, you need connections to help find people for your event. We're here as it relates to the arts in your region, and we're here to help.
Thanks, Deanna. And also want to give a shout out to another regional partner who just joined along with Deanna and Ryan Shelton from Noblesville, Rachel Jones from Region 3 up in the Fort Wayne area. So glad to see Rachel on the webinar this evening. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the program itself. The Arts Project Support program provides funding to support a public-facing short-term arts project or a series of arts activities. Some examples include performances, exhibits, arts festivals, arts and cultural program planning, arts learning for specific populations such as older adults and youth, public art, or some other arts-based or arts-serving activities. So this list is not meant to be exhaustive. If it's arts-related, and it's the expenses are eligible, then it's probably an arts project that is worthy of an application. So it's part of what our Arts regional arts partners do is, especially if you're a first-time applicant, if you're curious as to whether or not this feels like a project or not, regional arts partners can kind of help talk you through that. The goal of the program, pretty simple, to provide Indiana's people and communities access to arts experiences in all the ways. Program's got two outcomes that we're looking for. First, in every Indiana county, people and communities have access to arts experiences. So access is a big thing for us here at the Arts Commission. We want direct arts investment in all 92 counties, and it's really important that folks across the state have access to the arts. And that's one of the outcomes that we want to see as a part of this program. Second program outcome that we hope to see is historically underserved geographies and populations benefit from the program. So now I want to talk a little bit about some changes. We made some changes in FY25. Want to talk a little bit about those, remind you of those, and remind you of which ones are continuing into FY26. Number one is the maximum award amount will remain at $4,000 and recommended requests will be fully funded at the requested amount. What does that mean? If you are recommended for funding and you requested $2,000, you'll get $2,000. If you requested $4,000 and you're recommended for funding, you'll get $4,000. So provides a little bit more certainty in budgeting related to the difference between the request amount and what you actually receive. So think carefully about your requested amount and just know that if you are funded, that's the amount you will be funded. Grant awards will be made as a single payment at the beginning of the contract period. That's a change that we made in FY25 to pay grantees up front, especially for those projects that are small budget. That's a real big help. And we heard a lot of thank you, thank you, thank you. And we're going to continue to do that. It is incumbent on you, if you are funded, to make sure you submit your final grant report by the deadline to keep you in good standing with the IAC. But again, as long as folks continue to do that, we're delighted to be able to fund projects upfront at the beginning of the contract period. Some other changes for FY26, and this is a big one. 2 grant cycles, which is the first time we've been able to do that for this program. We have a spring cycle and a fall cycle. The spring cycle is the cycle that it's always been. Early March. This year, it's March 4th, 2025. The grant period is July 1 of this year through June 30th of next year. If you're thinking about, which cycle might be good for me, it's really good for projects that occur in late fall. So that's consistent with how we have run this program in the past. The new cycle is the fall application cycle. The application opens in July. Application deadline is September 9th, and the grant period runs on the calendar year, which is January 1 of next year through December 31. Good for projects or applicants that maybe March feels a little too soon and you need a little bit more time to plan and sort of think about it with your community and so forth, and September feels a bit better. That we're offering that opportunity this year. And some folks find our fiscal year grant cycle to be a little confusing. So if a calendar year cycle feels better, this would be the cycle for you to consider applying in. If you apply in the spring cycle and you're not funded, you can apply again in the fall cycle. If you apply in the spring cycle and you are funded, you cannot apply again in the fall cycle. So, okay. That's, again, we want to make sure that we provide as much access to folks as possible. Some other changes for FY26. Those of you who are experienced in this program or have applied and been successful grantees before, you may note that there are fewer and simpler application criteria and a simplified scoring rubric. So fewer questions and a more simplified scoring rubric that reviewers will use. Here's another big change for FY26, no public grant panels. And what that means is applications, once they've been submitted, will be distributed to a pool of reviewers who will review them as we have done in the past, and they will score them and provide written comments, which will be available to you after funding notification, but they will not gather in a public grant meeting any longer for this program. And the reason for that is so that we have the bandwidth, frankly, to offer this program a second time in the calendar year. It's a lot to assemble grant panelists and to run public panels. It's a lot for us and it's a lot for our regional partners. And again, what we heard from the field was we'd like to see this program offered more often. And so this is our way to be able to do that. So anyway, don't need to worry about tuning in for a public grant panel review. You'll receive written comments in the online grant system after the process is over. One more change in fiscal sponsorship that we made this year, you will need to contact the Indiana Arts Commission in advance before you begin an application. If you don't know what that means, then that change probably doesn't apply for you. But if you have been physically sponsored in the past or have been a physical sponsor in the past, that is a change for you related to making sure that you contact us in advance before you start an application. Couple of more changes for FY26. Some changes in eligibility for colleges and universities. Don't know if we have any representatives from colleges and universities on the webinar tonight, but in case. So we're changing the kind of projects that are eligible by college and university applicants. And we've changed it to projects can be either those that provide community arts learning experiences for grades K through 12 on their home campus or elsewhere, or arts activities in designated high priority geographic service counties. Again, if you're not a college or a university applicant, this change doesn't apply to you. And if you are, you more than likely have received an email from us already outlining these changes, but we wanted to make sure we went over them in tonight's webinar. One last change for FY26. 501c6 tourism entities and chambers of commerce are now eligible. And that's a change. That's a sort of an expansion in eligibility over previous years. And I think that's all the changes for FY26. It is. So I am happy to turn the floor over to Eric Ashby, our Director of Programs, to take you through the rest of the webinar.
Thanks, Maya. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to talk through some eligibility for the Arts Project Support Program. This is open to 501c3 arts organizations in any arts discipline, as well as 501c3 nonprofit entities at large that might provide arts programming. And that is not a field-specific thing. That could be at social services or other types of nonprofit organizations. As long as you're providing an arts project, you are eligible. It also is eligible to 501c6 tourism entities and chambers of commerce, like we just mentioned, local units of government, public libraries, public and private schools from pre-K through high school, pre-approved fiscally sponsored entities, and colleges and universities as well. There is an eligibility tool this year, which is a little different than in years past. When you go to the apply page, and I will show you this later on in the webinar, there's going to be a brief 3 to 4 questions that show up just to confirm some basic eligibility based on some of the things we've just talked through. If some of the answers to those questions indicate that you might not be eligible, it will pop up with a message there indicating that, and we'll give you a contact information that you can reach out to the IAC with questions about that. The purpose of the eligibility tool is just to make sure at a really surface level that you're eligible for the program before you begin an application. This program is not open to individual artists, so it's just something to keep in mind. It is a program for organizations, for entities. And so this eligibility tool just helps to make sure that people aren't starting and completing an application only to find out much later on that they weren't eligible. So we're trying to make sure we catch eligibility questions as early in the process as possible. Okay, is the Arts Organization Support Program a better fit? If you are an arts organization, a 501c3 arts organization with an annual budget of $20,000 or more in cash revenue, you may be eligible for the Arts Organization Support Program. That is the other program that also has a March deadline coming up here and is also open right now. We did webinars on that program last week. Those are recorded and linked on our website. You can find those there if you want to see the full details. It is a bit of a longer application for the Arts Organization Support Program, but the funding is for 2 years, and there's a little bit more flexibility in how you use the funds because it is an operating support program, meaning that it's not confined to a single project in the way that this program is. But again, that's only open to 501c3 arts organizations. If you're unsure about that or have other questions, please do reach out to your regional arts partner to discuss I will note that you can apply for one or the other, either arts organization support or arts project support. You cannot apply for both. Here are the program timelines for the spring cycle. This is that cycle that has the March 4th deadline that's coming up, has a grant period that runs July 1 to June 30. And the draft review deadline is February 24th. And we'll talk about how to request that and how that works a little later on. The funding notification will be by July 1st, with the final grant report due July 15th of 2026. That new cycle that Maya mentioned earlier, that fall cycle, that opens in the summer, this coming summer in July, with a September deadline, and there's a draft review available for that as well. It will run on the calendar year, January 1st to December 31st. This is the 2026 calendar year. Funding notifications will go out in December of 2025, with the final grant report due all the way out there in January of 2027. A little bit about the awards. The maximum award will remain $4,000 this year, and recommended requests will be fully funded. The percentage funded will depend on the size of the applicant pool and the available funds that the IAC has. Couple of notes about the grant recipient requirements. If you are funded in the program, one of the things that will happen is you'll enter into a binding contract with the state of Indiana. That will be the grant agreement. Payments for grants from the IAC are distributed via ACH, so those will arrive via direct deposit. And as a grantee, you will be required to follow the ADA requirements, federal civil rights, and all other relevant state and federal laws and policies that are in place at the time. Some additional grant recipient requirements. There are requirements around monitoring record retention and tax responsibilities, keeping documents and other things related to grant expenditures and the programming of the grant, making sure you hang on to those. Ensure that the grant funds are only used for eligible expenses. And there is a requirements and policies document that's linked in the guideline and is on our website, that you can see this full list of eligible and ineligible expenses. Some of the common ones that can sometimes pop up are food and beverage, cash awards and prizes, fundraising specific events. These are all not eligible expenses for IAC grant funds. So please keep those type of expense line items in mind as you're building your budgets and thinking about where you will expend the grant funds specifically. If you have your own organizational funds, those can certainly go toward items like this, but grant funds are not allowed to be used on these types of expenses. Additionally, there are some public acknowledgement requirements to acknowledge the funding source. That includes the IAC logo and the regional arts partner logo. And all of these requirements are also outlined in the grant contract as well, if that comes your way. Okay, so now we're going to move into some reporting requirements that are connected to the final report that'll happen at the end of the grant period. And I just wanted to give some broad strokes heads up around some of the metrics that are going to be in that final report, just so you know in advance. One is just the number of people served by the project. We know, depending on the project, that it might be easier or harder to count actually the number of people who come. So the final report just asks for estimates around attendance numbers and the general age range and groups. And so don't feel like you need to have that down to a specific science. It will be best estimates, and that's okay. We'll ask about the location where projects took place, how grant funds were used and the impact of those funds, any jobs that were supported, and then a final budget that outlines here's where our final expenses and revenue and things landed for this project. Some other reporting requirements. I just want to note and make clear that the IAC reserves the right to request documentation of grant expenditures and may conduct spot audits to ensure that expense eligibility and policy adherence are followed. So you must keep all grant-related records for 3 years from the date of final report submission. And so I'd recommend having some sort of accounting or reconciling process where you can isolate, here was the IAC grant and here's where the money went. so that if you are asked to provide proof of certain expenditures, you're easily able to do that and note that those funds have been used on eligible expenses. And secondly, the IAC may request a site visit to either attend the project, learn more about the work you're doing, and also monitor use of funds on eligible expenses in that mechanism as well. Okay, so those were all the sort of requirements, policy related things to receiving public funds. The next piece now we're going to move into is the evaluation process, how the applications will be evaluated for funding consideration. And so they'll be evaluated on three main criteria. One is project quality and planning, that is worth 30%. Another is community benefit, inclusion, and accessibility, that is worth 40%. And project management, which is worth 30%. And the evaluation criteria and the scoring rubric, those are all linked in the application. And so you can find those there, and I highly encourage keeping those nearby as you fill out the application. All right, digging in a little deeper into each criteria point, the project quality and planning, that looks at the extent to which the project provides a quality artistic experience for the community. The project timeline is defined and aligned with project description, and the project has clear goals, and there is a plan to measure project impact and effectiveness. Community benefit, inclusion, and accessibility, the extent to which the applicant can describe the community the project will serve. The community will benefit from the proposed projects. There are intentional efforts to directly engage underserved population, and the proposed project is accessible. And you can see the definition of underserved populations for the purposes of this program there at the bottom, and this is all also in the application and guidelines. Third big criteria bucket is project management, and this is looking at the extent to which the project team members have relevant skills and knowledge to administer the project, and the project spending is aligned with project description and goals. So here's how those criteria translate into the application, and we will look at this here in a second. There are 6 sections. First section just has some links and deadlines and tips around completing the application. Second section has a couple brief project overview related questions around timing and things of that nature. So just plain descriptive pieces about the project, and then it jumps into the pieces that the reviewers will look at to evaluate it. And that includes a project description, talk a little bit about the key artistic personnel involved in the project, some optional work samples that you can upload or provide links to, the timeline, and then the goals and evaluation. In section 4, it asks you to describe the community that the project serves, how the community will benefit from that project, and how that project will directly engage with underserved populations. And it will also have you confirm that it is ADA accessible, and we'll ask about some accommodation procedures if that were to come up. And then the last section there is project management and budget, which asks about who is the administrative team overseeing the project, and then the budget itself. And then section 6 is just the submit button. Okay, so I'm going to switch over to the online system here and show you what that all actually looks like in our system. And I will note, if you are a returning applicant, you can use the same credentials, same login credentials that you've used. New applicants may need to create an account. And I do want to note, if you are unsure if you have an account or not, please do reach out to your regional partner so that we can check that for you. Because your organization, if there's been turnover or maybe you haven't applied in a while, you may very well have an account with us already, and there might be some grant history in there that might be useful for you. So we want to make sure we can get you access to your account if you already have one with us. So when you log into the IAC online grant system, you will go to this apply page here and click apply. And that will take you to this page where you'll see the APS eligibility tool. And that will show up here, and you'll click this button in the bottom right that says Start Eligibility Quiz. And this is this opens up a couple brief questions confirming eligibility for the program. And so say, yes, I am a 501c3. I'm one of these things. Yes, I am in Indiana. In this case, I'm not a college and I don't need a fiscal sponsor. And I'll continue on and click submit eligibility. Once that goes through, yay, I'm eligible. I'll click continue, and that will take you then back to the supply page where you can click the supply button right here. And that will open up the application to the Arts Project Support Program. Now, once you're in the application, a couple buttons I want to point out. In the top right corner, there's this collaborate button. If you are working with a couple people on this application, you can click this button and type in their email and give them access to the application. And similar to sharing a Word document or a Google document, you can pick different levels of access. So they can just view, they can edit and submit. So that's available to you if that's something of use. Here you have some of the applicant details, and there's these little pens here. If some of this information, contact information or your address is out of date, we kindly ask that you update that in here so that that is accurate. Right here, this question list button, this will turn the full application into a PDF. So if you work better offline, working on this in a Word doc or somewhere else, you can PDF this and download it so that you have a copy of it. And this question list button is what will do that there. These three dots will allow you to collapse all the sections of the application. So scrolling down, we can see these are the sections we just discussed. They're all broken out in this way. Here's the before you begin. That includes all of those links I referenced around the guidelines, the evaluation criteria, all the things that we've been referencing in this presentation are all linked here. We have the overview that asks about the title, the type of product, type of activity, the dates, and a brief 3 to 5 sentence summary. And then we hop into the pieces that the evaluators look at. And so here's the project quality and planning section. And I want to note that there are some questions in this application that may have multiple parts. You can see this one has 3 bullets here. One thing that will be important to remember as you fill this out is to make sure you address each of those 3 bullet points, address every part of the question. If it's asking for multiple details or multiple things, make sure you're answering it fully. And so just be aware of when you see that type of structure to answer each of those pieces in the question. Here's the community benefit, inclusion, and accessibility section, and you'll see that the criteria are all copied and pasted up here, just like we referenced in the slides. They're all here and available to you. And I do want to note in this section in particular, it will be important to provide detail. And you can see there is green guidance language with these questions, and there are for a number of them in the application. But it will be important to be specific about who the project is serving and how they're going to benefit, because most of the reviewers will not necessarily know your organization or have any familiarity with your project. And so as they're looking at this, it'll be important to connect the dots for them so they can really get a sense of what you're doing, why you're doing it, and who it's going to serve and how you're engaging those people through that project. So you got to really be specific and connect those dots and substantiate the claims that you're making around what the project is going to do. So it's an important note, and I think it is particularly important in this section in particular. Section 5 here, project management and budget, just asked to list the project team as well as the budget here. And these budgets are tables. And so as you type in numbers on the left side, it will auto sum down here for you. And then here on the right side is where you can put a brief description of each line item. And please make sure you include the IAC grant here as cash income in your project. And the cash income number and the cash expense number, the totals should match. It should be a balanced budget for the submission. So that I'll say that again, that cash income and cash expenses need to be the same number. They need to equal each other. So please keep that in mind as you complete the budget part. And then there's the in-kind, the non-cash contributions. These are things like volunteer time, or if somebody maybe donated materials to the project or provided free marketing, that's the sort of thing you could include in here, but those are all non-cash contributions. And then it's just a submission. The form will auto save. There's a save button down here, but if you type something in and you click out of the box, it automatically saves. There's a little green thing that flashed there. It will auto save for you. So no need to worry about clicking the save button if you don't want to. And that is the application. So I'm going to stop the share and switch back over to the presentation here and continue on. All right. So I'm going to hand it over again to Deanna to talk briefly about how the draft review process works through the regional partners.
Perfect. Thanks, Eric. Yes. So if you are a first-time applicant to the program, you're eligible for a draft review. That deadline is Monday, February 24th. So that is the last day that you can request a review. In order to do so, all you do is you fill out the application online. You leave it in draft mode. There's no need to submit. You email your arts partner and let them know you would like a draft review done of your application that's in the system. We can go in there, see what you've written, and we go section by section, and we're able to enter comments in a box directly below each section. So you'll see feedback regarding each individual narrative in the online system. That being said, the sooner you can request a draft review, the better. If you wait until the very end, the partners are spending that week finalizing all the draft reviews and putting all the comments, depending on capacity. Sometimes if you can get it in at the very beginning, a partner might be able to do a little more back and forth with you and flush some things out a little bit more. So if you are able to get in a request, the sooner the better. But if it's just not possible for you, that February 24th is the absolute drop dead deadline for requesting a draft review. And then you are able to go into the system, see those comments, make edits and updates, and then officially submit in the online system. And once you have submitted, you cannot make changes. So that's it.
Thanks, Deanna. Highly recommend taking advantage of the draft review. It'll be real. I think it'll be very helpful. Okay. Couple pro tips here as we come to a close. If you're a first-time applicant, please do connect with your regional arts partner. Make sure they know who you are. They're a phenomenal resource, and I can't recommend building a relationship with them enough. It will be important in this process. Secondly, review the program guidelines, review the evaluation criteria and scoring rubric, and review the entire application before starting the application, so that you understand how things are being evaluated and the questions you'll be asked to answer. And as you complete the application, like we talked about while we were looking at it, being clear and thorough, answering every part of the question and providing detail to support your narrative, being as specific as possible so people can really get a picture of the great things that you're proposing to do and that you're already doing, that will be a great key to success in this program. So couple pro tips, and these are all in the application as well. Couple program contacts. If you have questions about the application, eligibility, guidelines, your regional partner is the first stop. For technical assistance with our online system, if something has broken in there, you got locked out, if something crashed, whatever it might be, please do reach out to the grants and operations team at the IAC, and we'll be happy to help with that. And then for accessibility accommodations or questions about accessibility for your specific project, please contact Stephanie Haynes, and her email is there. Here are those regional arts partners again. These folks are also linked on our website as well, and all their contact info is there, and it's linked in the guidelines. They're linked everywhere on our stuff. And that is it. So open the floor now for questions. You can unmute, put them in the chat. What questions are coming up for people?